Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. This is an initiative of the DTC Network. It's a network of independent tax litigators, and Daniel today is here with us for an interview on TrialPad. So thank you, Daniel, for your time. And I'd just like to give a brief introduction. Maybe, Daniel, you can present yourself, and then we can start with the questions.
Certainly, thank you very much. I'm a international tax litigation lawyer. So what I do mostly in my practice is I appear arguing usually transfer pricing and other related international tax issues in a variety of different tax courts in Africa. I've appeared in courts in Mauritius, Tanzania, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and I have court appearances lined up in Malawi as well as a few other African countries. So I've been doing these appearances in these other African countries for a number of years, and a couple of years back I did some research, because I am based in the United States, on the best technology to present very complex cases that require a lot of evidence to be displayed in court. You know, what was the best technology to use, and my research took me to a technology that runs, unfortunately, only on the iPad, and that's a program called TrialPad. Now, TrialPad allows you to upload all the documentation pertaining to a particular case onto your iPad, which you can then use to sort through the information and ultimately display it on a projector in court. Now that we've gone through this COVID-19 process, you can do the same via Zoom or any other online device or any online program where you're able to show documentation. It's a particularly powerful program in that it makes the presentation of the evidence you know, very good, in the sense that, you know, when you're in a courtroom, what happens, especially with these large transfer pricing cases running into thousands of pages, you know, your judges and the assessors are sitting with usually numerous bundles of files in front of them, and every time, you know, you're interviewing or cross-examining or examining in chief a particular witness, people now have to go to their indexes and to their bundles and start paging through everything, and it's very time-consuming and it's quite disruptive. Whereas with TrialPad, you can take them to the exact page of the thousands and thousands of pages of documentation. And in my experience, what happens is that the judge will still attempt to find the information in their bundle, but then eventually realizes that it's actually a lot easier for him or for her to simply, in the notes that they're making, cross-reference to the particular page or the particular section that's being spoken about, and focus on the screen in front of them in the courtroom, because the screen will reflect the page number, and as I will demonstrate in a short while, will assist in highlighting the specific area that you want the court to focus on, or that you want the witness to focus on. So as much as there will still be a reference to the bundle, everybody tends to focus on what has been projected on the screen, and that makes a very clear impression and helps you in identifying what particular piece of evidence or aspect of the evidence you're trying to convey. So I've been doing this now for probably just on 2 years. I've used this technology in all of the countries that I've mentioned. In every single case, it's been the first time that the court has actually witnessed evidence being presented in that fashion. And as much as these court systems are quite archaic in a sense, I certainly have met no resistance. My opponents would say, well, how are we going to admit the evidence that's being projected on the screen? And I would simply respond by saying, well, that evidence has been discovered anyway. It is before the court. You have it. The witnesses will have it. I'm just assisting the court and the court environment to take them to the appropriate pages in question so that one can focus on what needs to be done in respect of that piece of the evidence. So I've had no resistance, and all the feedback that I've got from my opponents and from dealing with the witnesses as well as the court has been very, very positive. So I know it's been very successfully used in the United States, but it's nice to see in these developing jurisdictions, there certainly has been a very positive reaction to it, and it's been very useful in presenting those cases. So many of my trials will run for weeks on end. I mean, I run trials that typically will last longer than 10 days. So it just is a great help in the courtroom.
And you mentioned that people have been very receptive of the usage, but also your opponents, you mean in court. Have you ever had an experience that other people are also using while in court? So
not in the jurisdictions I've been in. I anticipate that may change now that people have become a lot more adept with technology for court purposes. For instance, in South Africa, most court cases at the moment are being run through Zoom and then through a system called LegalServe, where the documentation is available online, and they're obviously using that system to project the appropriate pleadings or evidence on screen so that the participants in that case can see what's being done. So that's just a replication on a computer where everybody is sitting in isolation, being able to focus on a particular document. And that's proving to be a very useful process because people are now being compelled to use it. And so that really illustrates the power of being able to project what you want to show the courtroom in a courtroom. I mean, for example, another example is sometimes we will show a piece of evidence that is a video clip of, for instance, one of the cases that I was running in Mauritius was pertaining to a sea cable system. Now, it's quite difficult for people to visualize what this is, and so it's sometimes useful to show a little video clip of how the sea cable was actually laid out and how these strands, these literally thousands of tiny little strands of optic fiber are joined, because you can't have a cable that's 100,000 kilometers long. It's got to be done in sections. And so it just helps them visualize what the tax issue is about. So the subject matter, pertains to this cabling system, which gives rise to certain tax issues. It just helps them come to a better understanding of what we're dealing with and what the emerging tax issues are. So it's very powerful.
And does it come a point where you need people that are not familiar with TrialPad just want to cross-check the information with the pack that they have? So not really rely on the screen that is showing. Okay, it's showing the page and that's the page number. Do people come back to that page numbers and want to cross-check their information against what TrialPad is showing?
So TrialPad will show exactly what has been printed out. So I've certainly never encountered a situation where they are questioning it. I mean, as I said, typically when we start, everybody is still going back to their bundles and looking at the page numbers, and then eventually they realize that what is being reflected on the screen is effectively an electronic version of what is already printed in front of them. And in fact, it even gets to the point that when my opponents start cross-examining or doing their examination in chief, I will, when they make reference to a page, I will automatically go to that page and project it anyway. And I've certainly had none of them ever object to that. In fact, what typically happens is they'll say, my learned friend, could he possibly please take us to such and such a page? And then I will project the page that they're referring to in respect of their cross-examination or examination in chief. So it just kind of gets everybody to move into the same direction and focus on what is being looked at that particular point in court. To a lesser degree, when it comes to arguments, obviously you are arguing I certainly argue off heads of argument, which will summarize the facts, and then we'll cross-reference to specific cases. And where I find that very powerful is the authorities that I refer to. So typically when I open a case, one is given the opportunity to just give a summary of what the issues are and where you anticipate taking your particular case. And in aligning the thought process of the judge, and typically I'm in front of a judge and at least two assessors who are not lawyers, will be an accountant or somebody from a business background, is I will take them to the key principles that emerge out of the authorities, and I'll physically put up that particular page from the case, and it will be highlighted so that they can, and I'll actually read it back to them. And as they are looking on the screen in front of them, this particular extract is being highlighted and read. So when it comes to retention of key principles and the key points that you're trying to make, it's really being well underlined at the commencement of the case. And so hopefully they remember those principles as you're working through the evidence. And then obviously when you get back to the end of the case and you're now arguing, putting forward your arguments, emphasizing those principles and matching them now to the facts, once again, I'm able to then go from an extract of my heads of argument and take them back to those key principles from the cases. And I always make sure that they have copies of those cases available in front of them. And it just emphasizes the value of having highlighted those principles in the first place and how they match to the facts that have been presented.
So you also use TrialPad not only for building your case, so the prep work, but also on courts, and you make sure that you sustain your position, and you, at the same time that you're court defending your position, you're also showing that with TrialPad and just with your iPad and showing up the screen to the judge and to the opponents then.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, a good example is a transfer pricing case, which will run into tens of thousands of pages. It's very difficult to, you know, let's assume you're looking up and wanting to look at a particular issue. What makes TrialPad fantastic, all the documents you would load up would have to be in PDF format. So that's the one limitation. It won't actually read documents of another type. So everything's got to be PDF'd, which includes Excel spreadsheets. So that's a little time consuming initially, but once you PDF those Excel spreadsheets, I mean, when you run a search on a particular keyword where you're looking to highlight a particular point, it'll go through that entire database and categorize for you each of the documents where that keyword appears. And it then becomes very, very easy to go through tens of thousands of pages. You know, you might have remembered a particular point that was made somewhere and you just can't put your finger on it. Yeah. I find that to be extremely powerful in preparing. And I mean, I'll show you, unfortunately, the best example would be to show you one of my cases, but they're all subject to secrecy provisions. So I can show you a sample case, which has got nothing to do with tax, but that comes with the program when you download it.
Okay.
So let's do that. I'm going to just share my screen with you.
And you're mentioning that it was PDF files, but does TrialPad also support audios and videos, for example, if you have recordings of...
Yes, it does. It certainly does. So, it will report, it will support photographs, JPEGs, and then your classic MP4 kind of movies. So that makes it, you know, very, very useful when it comes to doing any kind of trial preparation. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with you. Let's just get there. What I'm showing you now is coming off the operating system of my iPad. As I mentioned earlier, this only works off the iPad. There's the name of the case. And then whatever documents have been uploaded. So typically what will happen when you connect your iPad to your computer, you go to your iTunes connection and it will pick up TrialPad, and then that's where you dump your documents in PDF format under the TrialPad folder, and it will then automatically upload them into TrialPad, and then you take them into the name of the file or the case that you've called, which in this case is sample case. So here you see are a list of different documents that were previously uploaded for demonstration purposes. We were speaking earlier about showing a video clip. So at the bottom here, let me just right at the bottom of this particular iPad screen, there's multimedia, which is that center button, and you'll see there's a clip, and it will come up as soon as I click it, and then it should play it.
Okay.
For some reason it's not playing whatever this video clip is, but typically it will play. But that's the multimedia, which is the photographs or a movie clip, will be shown under a separate tag. You now go back to documents. So let's go back to documents. And here you will arrange your different documents. So let's say, for instance, this is the complaint of the case. And with my finger or with my iPad pencil, I can flick through the page to page. And let's say, for instance, I want to highlight a particular area. You'll see that the call out button is now red, and I can literally, so let me try that again. I can literally go to a section and call it out, and it will highlight it.
Okay.
And then you click it with 2 fingers, or I can push the highlight button and it will actually highlight that portion. So as you're going through your documents, you're actually able to go in and highlight particular aspects on each page. Another one is, for instance, the laser. So now let's say, for instance, you're wanting to actually point out that this is a jury trial demand, or it was sent by fax, or for that you can use this little laser, or you can also use a pen device to actually highlight something. Now what's nice is this program keeps these documents clean. So as soon as I leave this document, it will wipe everything clean, so that in most cases, when you go to court, you shouldn't be admitting any kind of marked up document. The document should be in its original format. Otherwise, parties will object. But here you can actually, whilst it's now on the screen, bearing in mind your document in front of the judge is completely clean, you can now go in and do this kind of thing. So you might want to say, right, let's just focus on this paragraph over here, and basically what I'd like you to look at is look specifically at that paragraph, and if you start reading it and you use your pen and you say, you'll see there we're talking about the iPod, and so you can do this on the move while you're actually speaking to the document, either in the process of your arguments or in the process of highlighting something to a witness in examination in chief or in cross-examination. So that makes it really powerful. So you see, if I go back to that page, it's still there. But now let's assume I go to another document, and here's an exhibit. And let's go back to I now refer back to the document I was at. You'll see that it's cleared everything that I've done. However, it does have a lovely facility. Let's say that I did highlight this particular section and I pointed out to the court that was important, but I wanted to save that page. Then at the top, there's a key documents page, and it will ask me, do I want to save this as this current page or the entire document as a key document? And I may want to just refer back to this point, so I save it as a key document. If I go to key documents, it'll bring me back to that page, so that if I go back to my other list of documents, like I said before, if I go to a new document and I go back to the complaint, you'll see it's taken it back as being a clean document, but I want to highlight what I said previously on paragraph 6. I simply go to my documents and it takes me there. So, it's very powerful. So what I wanted to show you is, we mentioned the searching facility. So I'm going to just come up with a very general word. So let's just search the word law. As soon as I enter it into the search box and I push enter, look at that. It's going through every single document that you've uploaded into a TrialPad, and what it's done, it's actually told you how many times that word actually appears in each of the documents. So if I go to the European Social Charter, it actually takes me to the page number and tells me how many times, you know, it highlights where that particular word appeared in that page. So you can imagine if you've got a case that's running into thousands of pages, and you're wanting to you know, look for and so you can put in you know, this is about an infringement. So let's just go, sorry, let's just cancel this. I'm just going to go infringe. It just makes it so easy to find references to specific items. Okay, so there it hasn't let's just try something else.
And are all these documents the ones that are available to all the parties, or you also have like your preparation documents just for one party in that, or it's just all admitted evidence?
So what you would typically do is in using TrialPad, you are going to rather use documents that would be admitted in court. So from that point of view, all of these documents that are listed here are documents that would go to the other party. You could create a folder with your own sort of attorney-client privilege documents. You just need to be careful that you don't put them up onto the screen. But you're not making this entire program available to anybody else. This program is running on your technology, and you control what is being reflected. So you could easily, and I do that. So if there have been certain draft documents or certain elements that I have looked at that are not for dissemination to the court or to my opponent, I will have a folder that will set out those documents. And I simply, I mean, if you look at the bottom, well, at the bottom of this particular, right at the bottom of TrialPad, and I'm showing it to you on my screen, there's an output button. And the nice thing about the output button is, but it's not going to work now because I'm not outputting it onto any projector. But if you put the output button on, you can, you know, as you're scrolling through iPad, this TrialPad, you can freeze what was on the screen, or you can blank it out, and you can do your own thing on your iPad. And when you're ready to show whatever you're showing, so whilst you're looking for stuff, it's not showing on the screen. You can blank the screen out. You've got complete control over what's being displayed on the screen in the courtroom. And then when you get to where you want to be, that's when you then push the present button, and it will put it up for you. So it's very, very powerful. There are a lot of YouTube clips on it, which if anybody's interested in pursuing this as a technology for the courtroom, I would suggest look at those YouTube clips. That it gives you a lot of insight into the powerful features of this program. But, you know, hopefully that gives you some sort of insight as to its usefulness.
Yeah, and I see that on your screen you have some, for example, the crane hooks and the smoking gun, they are tagged as admitted. Is that so because they're admitted on court, or is there any other reason for that?
No, so basically if for instance you are putting up evidence and you're having to have it admitted to court, then you can actually mark that evidence as being admitted. For instance, I'm just trying to, I've never used the admitted button because certainly in all the tax cases I've argued, you know, everything that we discover has in effect already been admitted to court. It's very rare that we would introduce a new document. We normally have to bring a new application to show that there's no prejudice to the other side because they haven't had an opportunity to look at it. So it's I guess it's somewhat different to your normal civil cases. In the tax cases, I argue we've in a sense admitted all the documents by way of discovery well before the case is commenced. So I don't particularly use that button, but you can. So if you need to differentiate between documents that have been formally admitted as to those that haven't, then you can mark those documents. So there, you know, you can highlight what has been admitted. You can also give the exhibits particular numbers. Again, you know, there are different ways in which you can manipulate the system. I don't use that feature. Another nice feature is if you know, wanting to send, you're busy preparing a particular case and you've got a team working on it, you know, as you're going through things, you can either, you know, you've highlighted, so let's say go back to what I highlighted previously. Let's go back to my key documents. Let's say I want to send this page to one of my team members, sort of highlighting something. I can push the forward button and I can email them the document, or I can print it or upload it into another program, either the entire document or the current page, whatever the case is. So that's also quite a nice feature.
Okay, no, that's for sure.
There's a lot here. I mean, I probably am not using every single aspect of it, but I must say I've now used it probably in 5 or 6 different cases. You know, as you go into it and you use it more and more, you become a lot more relaxed with it, and you kind of push it harder in terms of using all the features. And it's like anything. It'll take a while for you to develop into using the features. But as I said, there are a lot of YouTube, very good YouTube videos on it that are certainly useful. But I found it a very powerful program.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's very powerful as well. Like, you create your own dossier and you are able to track it down very efficiently, the words that you're looking for, specific documents. So yeah, we can see how useful that can be for lawyers. They're building a lot of cases at the same time. So that was a very helpful explanation. Thank you so much. I guess that was all the questions that we had. That was more for us to understand how TrialPad works and your experience with it. And we can see you had pretty good experiences, and also, of course, you were very willing and acceptable to it, so, and also your opponents. So it's good to know that people are on the right track for automation, digitalization of court cases. So thank you for this interview. It was very helpful, and we hope to see you again in our GTC calls. And thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you. Bye-bye.